Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you, respected committee. My name is Julia Wyman. I'm one of the founding members of the Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence, and I serve as their volunteer legislative director. The Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence has just signed up our 100th member, together which we now represent 120,000 Rhode Islanders. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to present this argument, but I realize we have many other people, and so I will be as brief as possible. We support the Safe Schools Act, which is Senate Bill 2289 by Senator Metz. It provides that only peace officers, as defined under 12-7-21, and persons approved by school authorities for the purpose of educational instruction may have firearms on school properties. Currently, anyone in Rhode Island with a concealed carry permit can carry his or her firearm into Rhode Island K-12 schools without the knowledge of police or school administrators or anyone. There is completely unfettered discretion about carrying a loaded firearm in our schools. 46 states generally prohibit the carrying of concealed carry guns in K-12 schools, even by concealed carry permit holders. Rhode Island is an outlier in its approach to guns in schools compared to the rest of the country. There are only 4 states that generally allow guns in schools, and each of those arguably have good reasons to do so, in that they have schools that are in very remote locations away from police and other circumstances. Our law really exists as an outlier, I believe, because it was implemented in 1990, which was 9 years before the Columbine shooting, well before we started considering the issue of arming school teachers. And so the question becomes, how do we deal with this? And what we came up with is a proposal that would allow persons who are defined as peace officers alone to carry loaded firearms on school grounds to protect children, but not generally concealed carry permit holders. We understand that many of the people here who may have concealed carry permits are well-intended and quite proficient at shooting, but when put under circumstances of live fire and challenges whether to shoot or not to shoot, these are very highly skilled decisions that police and people who are trained as peace officers are uniquely qualified to possess. We don't believe that teachers should be armed. We don't believe that anybody should be armed unless they're trained peace officers or law enforcement. Together with the Rhode Island Police Chiefs Association, we are supported in this position by the Rhode Island Education Leadership, which includes the Rhode Island Association of Schools and Principals, the Rhode Island Association of School Committees, and the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals. Polls show that 82% of registered Rhode Island voters supported restricting concealed carry in elementary schools. We think it's time, especially in light of the heightened awareness about guns in schools, that we have an honest conversation about this issue, and we ask that you pass this bill through the committee. Do you have any questions?
Any questions or comments for this witness? Thank you. Mr. Sicoscio, good evening and welcome.
I have other bills to present on. Did you want me to go through all of them?
I'm sorry. I thought nope. I want you to do all of them now because I imagine Mr. Sicoscio is going to take a minute as well.
Oh, okay. So go
ahead.
Through them. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Only a minute.
Only a minute. Might take a little bit longer. Sorry about that. Next, we are in support of, let me just get my glasses, sorry. The 2 bump stock bills that were just testified about, we wholly support them, and just would comment that we hope that they would not serve as a substitute for also passing a high-capacity magazine bill and an assault weapons ban bill. We fully support the Senate Bill 2319, which would render illegal the purchase and possession of high-capacity magazines, which is defined as more than 10 rounds. This law would reduce the number of rounds that could be shot before a shooter has to reload, and that's the critical issue here. We know that generally there are 30-round magazines, as much as 100-round magazines, and the point of this bill is really to force a shooter to reload their firearm each time they run out of rounds. Connecticut, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey have all passed this law. There are a total of 9 states that have passed it, and it has been upheld in, by my count, 5 different state Supreme Courts. I think, a lot of talk we've had a lot of discussion about this bill in the past, but more recently, I noticed that according to Professor Siegel of Boston University, some more recent data that I think is helpful, he stated that whether a state has a high-capacity magazine ban is the single best predictor of a mass shooting rate in that state. To be clear, we're not saying that there's a correlation between that state's laws and banning high-capacity magazines and a lower rate, but rather that there is a relationship between the two. Since 2012, we have seen 63% lower rate of mass shootings in those states that have banned high-capacity magazines. Another point I want to make is that a separate study that was done in the Journal of Urban Health in October of 2017 found that high-capacity magazines have been used in over 40% of murders of police in recent years. This report was co-authored by the investigator of the congressionally mandated assessment of the 1994 federal assault weapons ban. And so it's a highly commissioned study, and the fact that police are directly implicated by allowing these high-capacity magazines to continue to exist in our state is alone an incentive for banning them. So we ask that this committee pass that bill as well. Moving on to the more difficult issue of assault weapons, we support this bill because it seeks to ban future purchase and possession of assault weapons, but it also has a grandfather clause allowing people who currently own them to keep them and make it subject to a background check upon subsequent transfer. Military-style weapons like AR-15s are made for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to kill as many people as possible. And I've heard time and again that these are sporting rifles and that they're used to protect one's home. But we have seen from San Bernardino, where 14 people were killed, 49 people in Orlando, 58 in Las Vegas, 26 in Sutherland, Texas, and now 17 in Parkland, Florida, that that's not the case. In fact, they're being used for the commission of malice and hatred. And it's time that we as a society, and especially as Rhode Islanders, consider where our values are. When we make decisions, we make them based on risk-benefit analyses in the law and in life. And so we have to weigh the benefit of being able to use a sporting rifle and for the gun lobby to make a profit against the risk that people in society are walking around fearful to be in their schools, fearful to be in public places, the risk to our police communities. It's time that we got on board with our neighboring states and ban assault weapons. Do you have any questions or comments about the bill as proposed?
Somebody up here is bashful, don't worry. Somebody will jump in and interrupt you if they do. So just continue.
We are also in support of the Extreme Risk Protection Order bill, the AKA Red Flag bill, sponsored by Senator Goodwin. We wholeheartedly support it. We realize that there are different versions of it, and we reserve judgment on the final draft. The one thing that we would just say is that whatever version that is ultimately decided upon, that it be mindful and considerate of the fact that many people in the mental health community are often stigmatized when we talk about guns and violence, and it's far and away more likely that persons with mental health problems are indeed the victims of violence, not the perpetrators of violence. Carrying long guns in public places, that's Senate Bill 2274. That's an Attorney General bill sponsored by Senator Miller. It makes unlawful any person to carry a rifle or shotgun in any vehicle or conveyance on or about his person, whether visible or concealed. Currently, people can walk around carrying long guns, rifles and shotguns, and in fact, assault weapons in our public spaces, unbeknownst to me. This bill simply seeks to make long guns subject to the very same requirements as pistols. We wholly support that bill and hope you do as well. The straw purchaser bill, which is Senate Bill 2615, again, that's an Attorney General bill sponsored by Senator Miller. It provides that no person shall knowingly purchase or otherwise obtain a firearm on behalf of or transfer to a person whose transferor knows or reasonably should know is prohibited from possession or possessing or receiving the firearm. The Rhode Island Coalition supports this bill because straw purchasers are the gateway to crime guns, including, for example, the massive number of straw purchasers in Indiana that supply guns in Chicago. We wholly support that bill and hope you do as well. Lastly, in terms of bills that we support Senate Bill 2455, sponsored by Senator Coyne. That bill makes the AG the sole issuing authority for concealed carry permit holders. We have no objections to the language other than to say that there is language that says that the local police chiefs would be consulted and shall cooperate with the AG's office. We would prefer to see the language to say that the AG shall consult the local police chiefs and that the local police chiefs shall cooperate, because we think it's critically important that local police who best know their community and their residents should be consulted before issuing a concealed carry permit. As far as bills that we oppose Senate Bill 2148, which allows persons with concealed carry permits issued by other states to carry their firearms in Rhode Island if they recognize Rhode Island CCP holders. We wholly oppose that bill. And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into this and why. When I did a search of what states have reciprocity with Rhode Island, and that's, I should say, one-way reciprocity, because in fact we don't have reciprocity with them, but they allow our CCP holders to come to their states. I pulled up the list of those states. There are 23 of them. The problem is that, with the exception of Michigan, which is one of the 23, all the others have very lax requirements compared to Rhode Island. 10 of the states don't require safety and proficiency training. Rhode Island does. Forgive me, 16 are shall issue states. We, in Rhode Island, we have discretionary-based issuance of concealed carry permits so that the Attorney General may, but must not necessarily allow someone to have a concealed carry permit. 16 of the states that are part of those 23 states have a shall issue standard. So basically, we are lessening our standards by allowing these concealed carry permit holders to come to our state and carry loaded firearm everywhere in our state, because again, that's the scope of where you may carry in our state, everywhere, including our K through 12 school settings. So we object to that. There's no way for police to verify whether an out-of-state person has a valid concealed carry permit. At the insistence of the gun lobby, there is no database for such information, much less an interstate verification system. States widely differ on their permits. Some have photos, others don't. It's wrought with problems. Another point I'd like to make is that Rhode Island is the host of over 24 million tourists. We are very fortunate considering that we're a population of just a little over 1 million. And indeed, a goodly portion of our budget, if not maybe one of the first or second portions of our budget, stems from our tourism. These are festivals, bars, beaches, restaurants. We pride ourselves on our growing reputation as a family-friendly tourism destination, which is reflected in all of these ways. We do not want to invite untrained, poorly vetted, unverified people to flood our public spaces with loaded firearms. We think the law is very bad for Rhode Island and our economy. That is the only bill we oppose, amazingly. We have no position on Senate Bill 2134, sponsored by Senator Archambault. That's the Attorney General report bill that it basically requires that there be a report maintained by the Attorney General's office, unless, of course, it is deemed that those reports are already being undertaken in Rhode Island, for instance, by the gun court, Judge Crass, because we would not want to see our resources expended on duplicative efforts. To the extent that it does get modified, however, we would like to see the categories expanded to include domestic violence abusers, as well as persons who've applied for concealed carry permits, because we think that would be very helpful information. We have no position on Senate Bill 2276, sponsored by Senator Metz, which is in regard to possession of firearms by minors. And we have no position on Senate Bill number 2606. Again, that's an Attorney General's bill that has to do with obliteration of toy guns that are made to look realistic. We have no position on that either. That is the entirety of the bills that I have on the docket for tonight, and thank you for hearing me out.